everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and joining me in the studio today are two of our panelists you'll definitely recognize from past shows, here to show you some things from their yard and give you some ideas about what you can do in your backyard. So before we get into the things that they've brought to talk about, let's have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about them. So Jim, we'll start with you.
I'm an entomologist, a retired entomologist with the Illinois Natural History Survey here at the University of Illinois. So I deal with the insects and mites attacking trees, shrubs, and flowers.
Excellent. All right, Kay.
I'm a Champaign County Master Gardener, and I volunteer out at Allerton, particularly in their herb garden, because that's my area of expertise.
All right. Herbs and heirlooms, right? Okay, so Jim, you sent in some really awesome pictures of something that you've got at your place, and I'd love to just have you kind of walk us through that.
Well, you know, one of my hobbies is water gardening. And people don't realize, but there's above the ground water gardens and in the ground water gardens. So I'd like to show the folks here some above the ground gardens. This one that we first see is a photograph of this was taken in the wintertime. So it's not exactly a beautiful picture of a water garden, but on the other hand, you can see how it was constructed. It was just like building a log cabin with planks. And in the leaflet I've gotten, I describe how that is constructed. So if people want to have more information about water gardening, they could go to that leaflet.
Okay, we'll post that on our website, and you can find that a little bit later after the show.
Okay, and then the next one is another water garden. This is above the ground. You can see how that is made. That's a preformed container that they placed, and then they put these pavement blocks around it. And all this was taken in the wintertime. It was really very attractive when the plants were all growing. And then this is I have two water gardens. This is the top one is the one that was a cattle water container that you buy at a cattle where they sell, or Farm and Fleet sold that. And then just put that on the ground, and I put decorative stones around it, and very attractive, and very simple to do. So that's very easy to do.
This one's my favorite.
Then this is the one that I had. I was very fortunate because I have a hill, and so the contractor put the waterfalls into the hill, and then had big equipment like a backhoe, and dug the hole for the water, for the water, and then that's got a liner, of course, and then you put the liner down, and then put the rocks around, and that worked out really well.
Yes, that's gorgeous. I bet it's really calming to sit next to.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I bet.
And so this was taken in the summertime when everything was starting to grow.
Now some of the plants that you have in your
these
water
are
garden.
hardy water lilies. In other words, these are lilies that will do well. You don't have to take them in or anything. You just let them in the pond all year long. And this one here is called James Bryden. And it's just a beautiful lily that has great big blooms. And the next one is called Chromatella. It's a nice small yellow lily. And then the next one is Charlene Strong, which is a nice cream-colored one. And then the next one is called Virginalis, which is a white. And that bloom on the left, you can see that little damselfly.
Yeah.
And damselflies are exceedingly good mosquito hunters. Those dragonflies are both excellent mosquito hunters. And then the last one is really my favorite. This is another hardy water lily. It's called Colorado, just like the state Colorado. Produces a large number of blooms, and it's just absolutely beautiful.
Yes.
And then the next one, this was called Panama Pacific. Now this is a tropical lily, so you have to take those in, or if you have a greenhouse, you can put them in the greenhouse. I put mine in sort of a tub near the window, and they overwinter in that. But this is a very nice one. And then the last one is a night bloomer. You don't think about night bloomers, but this is a tropical. And people say, well, why would you want a lily at night? But when you're entertaining with the night bloomer, they start opening up about 4 in the afternoon.
Oh,
And they're open. And then when the guests arrive for dinner at 7 or so, they're in beautiful bloom. And
Voila.
whereas the others, the other hardy lilies, they're all closed up.
Very
So
nice.
that's why I have. But anyway, it's a fun hobby, and that write-up will give you more details about.
So
Whatever.
a question I have is, are they, you can see the stems here, are they in pots just set down into the water?
Yes, there's in pots in the water, right, you know. Yep.
And you just leave them there all summer and then fish them out?
Well, with the tropicals you do, yeah. But the others
Interesting.
you just let in the water.
You just leave them in there.
Yeah,
Do you ever have to repot them? Or?
Yeah, I do, and that was in the write-up. You really need to repot them about every 2 years for sure.
Okay.
If you don't, they get overcrowded and they don't bloom as much.
Very nice. Those are gorgeous, Jim. Thank you so much for sharing those photos. Appreciate that. Okay, Kay, we're going to you.
Okay.
With another lovely something.
I'm going to start with this. This is a flower from my hardy hibiscus plant, and it's actually one of my very favorite plants that I have. It's quite old. Well, I've probably had it 20 or 25 years. And it's an interesting plant because in the winter, everything completely dries back, and the stems get woody and hollow, and you can just pull them right out of the ground. And then in spring, I wait and I wait and I wait, and nothing happens. And every year, you'd think I'd learned this by now. I think that I've lost it, but eventually, little green sprouts will start coming out. And once that happens, they grow like crazy. And the plant I have is probably 4 or 5 feet tall and as wide. And this year, it's really blooming like crazy. It's just absolutely loaded. And it's been blooming for 3 or 4 weeks, and there's still buds. It's full of buds.
Wow.
So it's
Does
really,
it need support? Is it trellised?
No. The stalks are quite sturdy.
Okay.
And it's no maintenance. I don't water it.
Those
I
are our
don't do
favorite. anything.
Totally no maintenance. And
Those
you'd
are the
think it
best
would
ones.
be, something you really had to take care of and do a lot, but it's not.
As far as pruning or dividing, do you have to do anything to this? Nothing at all. Just
Nothing
set
at
it and
all.
forget it.
Yep.
Oh, we love that.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. And the blooms are just
Yes, they also
enormous.
come in, the white is common, and also a maroon color. But I liked this pink one.
Boy, it's absolutely gorgeous.
It is gorgeous. And I also have seen people making hibiscus tea.
Sure.
So I want to figure out how to steep the petals.
Yeah,
And
I'm
give that
not
a
which
shot.
part of it you would use.
I don't know. Well, we'll have to Google it.
Yeah, there you
Google
go.
knows everything. Okay. All right, Jim, we are back to you.
Well, I brought in
With a
a
unique-
branch here of a bush called button bush, and this is a native to the Midwest. It does very well, and it has these beautiful blooms on them, and they're very attractive to butterflies. Butterflies absolutely like these blooms, and the foliage is nice. It's got this nice green foliage, and it's Japanese beetle resistant, so that's another thing going for it. And I have about 3 of them on my property, and they get about maybe the one is probably about 10 feet in height, so they do get pretty tall. But just an absolutely beautiful plant, and you can purchase these at different nurseries. If you want to find a source, you just go to Google and put in button bush.
Button bush.
Yeah.
Now, if you were going to seed save, I'm imagining this is what you would
Yes.
keep in those tiny little.
Yeah, well, this is what it looks like after
so
these
those are the
done.
seeds.
So the seeds are inside this, inside the green part.
Oh, okay. I was
It dries
thinking
up.
this was, but no, they're
those are
inside
not,
there.
No, they're inside here,
Good
but
to
it dries
know.
up. You could start them from seed, I think.
I love the foliage. I like a nice dark,
it's
Really pretty
glossy.
green.
Yeah, that
it's
is really
just-
pretty.
And butterflies love them.
Excellent. Okay. Kay, we're back to you.
Okay, well, I brought some herbs because this is time to, no pun intended,
I was going to say, come on.
this is time to harvest your herbs. And this is sage. There's a couple ways to preserve them after you dry them, and how you dry them. The sage and this is some basil. are pretty hardy, and so I just put them in. I cut the leaves off the stem and put them in a layer, like on a cookie sheet or something, and put it in a warm spot and leave it there until the leaves dry. And when you cut them, um, if you cut at a node like this, then the side shoots will grow out, and so you'll get a bushier plant.
Oh.
And this is basil. Basil's the same thing. I also just dry that in warm air. And one of my other favorite plant herbs that I use a lot is parsley. It's kind of droopy right now, but this is what they call flat leaf parsley, and that's the one I use to cook with. The other variety is called curly parsley. And this you actually dry in the refrigerator.
Oh.
So I cut the leaves off and put them in a pie pan and just set them in the refrigerator
Just leave
until
them.
they dry. Because if you dry them in heat, they just get mushy and yellow, and they lose their flavor.
Okay.
And there's a couple other herbs also that.
Now, Kay, do you have any caterpillars feeding on your parsley?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Well, they haven't. They really haven't bloomed yet.
Okay, the black swallowtail loves parsley.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, as an adult, the butterfly is really pretty.
Now, I don't see, well, we see some butterflies. I see monarchs quite often, a lot. But I haven't seen the swallowtails this year.
Yeah, the black swallowtail particularly, they love parsley.
Yeah. Well,
The caterpillar stage.
Now, how long after they're dried, can you keep herbs?
well, it depends. Again, it's the parsley. Once it's dry, I crumble it up and put it in, like the Parmesan cheese.
Yes, like a shaker.
And I keep that in the refrigerator. It keeps much better in the refrigerator than it does out in the air. The basil and the sage and tough ones like that, I just keep in jars in the basement. We have a basement.
Yes, you've told us before. Don't put your herbs in the cabinet next to the stove. And literally everyone at home is probably like, ugh.
I know, but that's true because it just takes the flavor right out of.
Yes.
Yeah. So
One of these days.
what I do is I have small jars that I do put in the cabinet. So they're handy to grab,
Yes.
and I'm constantly refilling them. I don't put a lot in
That's a
at
good
a
idea.
time. So if they're there for a short, just a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, or even a month, they're okay.
Okay, got it.
But yes, you don't want to. It really takes the flavor out of them quickly.
Gotcha. Okay, now we're going to talk about some harm, huh?
Yeah, this is a redbud plant or bush or tree. It's a small tree. Is really sensitive to herbicide injury, and right here, this little leaf here shows herbicide injury. When it gets it, it curls up the leaf, and it's sort of a yellowish green, very leathery like, and it's very common to see that. Redbud, another indicator plant is grape. Grape is very sensitive to herbicide injury, and again, you can see how sort of leather-like and curled up and sort of yellowish green. And tomatoes are also very sensitive. So the same occurs on tomatoes. The leaves curl and turns out sort of like greenish color, light greenish color. So if somebody in the neighborhood area was using herbicides, and some years it's much worse than others. This year really not that bad. But
In terms of travel, how far can that?
I don't really know. I'm sure it can travel quite a distance, and unfortunately, when you use herbicides today, air currents, or if they have a strong wind, it can blow around everywhere. So
Yeah.
serious problem. Yeah.
Interesting.
We've had crop dusters a lot lately, and that always makes me nervous.
Because you're just
Yeah.
waiting
Yeah.
to see if there's
So
damage.
far, we haven't had a problem, but
Yeah.
it's
Wow. Okay. I'm dying to talk about this leaf here because I think that's so fascinating.
Well, this is a sycamore leaf, and this is damaged by a Japanese beetle. And one friend of mine, what she did, she put it in between the books to get it real flat. and then she sprayed it with a gold spray and framed it. And actually, it's really pretty. It's a, you know,
Yeah.
even though the Japanese beetle did a lot of damage, we consider, you know, if you spray it with a gold plant and put it in a frame, it's rather attractive.
I agree. But
Now,
they did some
was
major
that-
work on
Oh,
that
they
leaf.
did major work.
Was that just one leaf for the whole tree, or?
Well, there were several leaves on this sycamore small tree, and they really did a job on it.
About how much longer do you think will we be seeing Japanese
Oh,
beetles?
probably about. They generally fade away in late July. Well, yeah, this is about late July.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
about another 2 weeks, I would give it.
Couple more weeks,
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah.
Just battle through it for a couple more weeks, and then we'll be in the clear. And then you brought one more. We've got time to talk about that too.
Well, this is called purple bellflower. This is a native to the Midwest. It's rather attractive. It's called a weed, but you know, when you consider it's pretty weeds.
Yeah, I have some of that in my prairie garden.
Yeah, I think it's very pretty and you know, very common. So
Is
anyway.
that did you say that one was native as well? Is that native?
This is native, yes,
Very
yes.
pretty.
It's called bellflower.
And will that bloom all throughout the summer?
Well, you know, it blooms for about a month.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, you got some little blooms here, buds here that are ready to bloom. But and they get tall. Maybe some of them are maybe about maybe 6 or 7 feet in height.
Very nice. How are things looking at both of your homes? How are your gardens looking and faring? I know it's been wacky weather-wise.
I
It
know.
was super dry, and then we got some rain. So how's your garden looking?
Well, it's struggling a little bit now. It did, like you said, after we got the rain, it really took off. But like the spring crops, the lettuce and spinach and stuff like that, it just was non-existent this year. However, the squash and the cucumbers have really gone crazy. My beans are doing great. You know, I picked a lot, and I still got plenty more to pick.
What about tomatoes?
The tomatoes are doing well, but I had soaker hoses on the tomatoes
right.
and the beans, and that, I mean, that was the only way I could keep them alive. So I'm running them again. I thought I was done with them for a while, but that's not the case.
Still producing, still producing. Jim, what about you? Flowers or?
Well, ask the animals.
We're in the same boat.
Ask the animals.
have to give them
I don't have a
10%.
garden anymore. I mean, I just gave up. The deer and the raccoons and the squirrels, they got it all.
Yes.
So, you know, they should share.
They should, shouldn't they?
I don't mind sharing, but they don't
I
mind.
mean, they take everything. I've wanted to taste a May apple for forever. Can't get one. They tried to get all of the ground cherries, but I had to put them up on the deck so that they can't reach them. I mean, they mowed down the lilies down to just
Well,
the
we've
stems.
been in our house over 40 years, and this is the first year we've had raccoons show up.
Oh.
And
There's a lot to eat at your place, too,
yeah, but
I imagine.
I was told that they really like mulberries, and the mulberry tree was, you know, fruiting at the time.
They definitely do like mulberries.
Yeah, so, and they've left now, so I guess
Well, they'll probably be back.
I hope
you might
not.
have some seasonal guests.
because they got into our Oriole feeders.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. Well, thank you guys for all of the great things you brought in and discussion we had. So, as you know, we take this show on the road sometimes, and we've met some really, really neat people along the way. We met Tony Becker. He's no exception to that. We met Tony Becker at a plant swap way, way, way at the beginning of this year, and he had an incredible story, and so we followed him all throughout the garden season, and he's just overcome so many things, so many obstacles, and so Taylor, DJ, and I would like to share his story with you. Take a look.
I didn't talk yet. I wasn't even talking yet. One of my mom's parents, Eileen, she bent down and she showed me this flower and she goes, "Flower," and I said, "Flower" back. That was my very first word. Everyone was like, "Wow, you said it." And then my very first word is not mama or papa or anything easy. It was flower.
Tony Becker has always been fascinated with planting things.
My parents always had a garden, as far as I can remember. I guess I watched them because I was about 6 or 7, and I guess I watched them plant. I went into the freezer and I grabbed me a bunch of beans, and I said, these are seeds. Or I guess I thought these are seeds. I planted them in my mom's house plants, and then of course they start growing, and my parents come up to me and they call me into the room where the house plants are, and my mom's going, "What is this, Anthony? What is this?" Because my mom's Hungarian, so she has that accent. And so I'm like thinking I did something wrong. "This is very good, Anthony. You like to plant?" And they produced several beans, and I remember my parents, taking them and giving me, here's what you grew.
While other kids took fishing poles or flashlights to summer camp, Tony took seeds.
I was kind of mad that, I missed basically 8 weeks of messing with the garden while at camp. So I actually took the early tomatoes, and I actually, got them to be with the flowering and took them with me to camp, plus some radish seeds because I knew they would be done in a month. And I grew tomatoes and radishes at camp.
His love of gardening grew, and after serving in the Navy, he enrolled at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville to study crop sciences. Next up, grad school at the U of I.
On my way to my first final exam as a grad student, which was actually the first day I ever missed school, I rolled my truck and I broke my neck. December 98. I was going to go and study for another hour at school, and there was black ice, the ice you can't see, on the road in front of me. I couldn't see it because the sun was behind me. And the next thing I remember is about 2 weeks later, you're still kind of in the fog about what exactly happened.
Tony was now a quadriplegic.
It was weird. You have weird feelings when you're first aware. Everything's tingling a lot. It feels like your hands are going to sleep. Well, I wasn't fully aware that I wasn't going to ever move properly again until the doctor really put it on the table. And then I became very depressed, I guess, because I was no more garden. I've worked on my own car. I've replaced almost everything except for the motor and the transmission. And I started to realize I can't do any of that anymore. I also love to dance as well. So that was all gone. And so I was depressed for quite a while.
After months of therapy and learning how to live life a different way, Tony returned to school, earned his PhD in bioinformatics, and then got back into the garden.
But now I can take both hands, and if I'm really getting into stuff, I'm leaning down, and actually this is too short for this, but I'm leaning down and I'm really working into things.
Most garden tools are made for a standing person. So for the past several years, Tony has been modifying the tools he buys and making his own.
So some of the tools that I made just didn't work right, weren't very good, too bulky. The other thing is it's not, you'd think short tools would be better, but they're not. It's actually the longer tools that are better. The longer you can make it, and it has to be light, of course, if they're long, the better it is. You need a reach of at least 1 meter away from you in order to do any real significant gardening. So the challenges of using the garden tools gets less and less every year as I learn what works, what doesn't work, as my strength gets even better.
And it's that same strength that helped Tony find his way back to the garden. So who is Tony Becker?
Someone who obviously had to overcome major catastrophe in his life, but I've gotten much better at gardening, and even though it's not exactly how I want the landscaping, how I want things, I can still do it. I'm still able to do it with very minimal help from anyone else. And I'm going to still do it because keeping me active will also keep me more alive as well. So it'll always be my enjoyment till I can't pick up a tool anymore.
And we hope you enjoyed watching Tony's story. And if you'd like to learn more about Tony, you can visit our website, will.illinois.edu/Prairie Fire, where that story originally aired. If you've got questions for our panelists, you can send them in to us at yourgarden@gmail.com, or just search for us on Facebook under Mid-American Gardener. We'll see you next time. Good night.